No one really knows where Mr. Sinclair came from. No hiring record, no home address, just an old nameplate and a voice that hums like a worn-out tape recorder. A student named Leo was the first to notice something wrong. A mirror with no reflection, eyes that never blinked, a classroom where time stood still, and then he started to fade. No one remembers when Leo stopped showing up. His name is still on the roster. His face is still in the yearbook, just blurred, eyes hazy like someone tried to erase them. Only Tasha remembered, and even she eventually stopped speaking his name. They say Mr. Sinclair doesn't really teach biology. He recruits a new kind of species, one without pulse, without reflex, without memory. If you notice someone in class who never blinks, if their shadow doesn't follow their step, if the lab mirror fogs up when no one's breathing near it, don't turn your back, because maybe you've just been chosen. Part 1. The mirror in the lab. My biology teacher doesn't have a reflection. Not in the mirror above the lab sink, anyway. It was a dumb thing to notice. That's what I told myself. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe he was standing at the wrong angle. Maybe I just needed more sleep. But deep down, I knew what I saw didn't see. The day started out normal. It was Tuesday. Third period. The kind of grey, forgettable morning where even the sky seems unsure of itself. I remember the clouds being so low, it looked like they were squatting over West Haven High, ready to smother it. Biology class was the same as always. Sterile smell, humming lights, old posters of cell structures peeling on the walls. Mr. Sinclair walked in right on time. Crisp shirt, tight tie, thick black glasses, posture like a statue. He never said hello. He just walked in, closed the door, and began writing on the board in perfect, slanted cursive. Today, human organ systems. I was half awake, doodling a tiny skeleton in the margin of my notes, when I got assigned to clean the beakers after class. Of course, Mr. Sinclair didn't assign punishment with emotion. He just wrote your name on a list with that same smooth handwriting. No lectures, no scolding, just lab cleanup after class. Don't be late. When the bell rang and everyone poured out into the hall like water breaking through a dam, I stayed behind. I was rinsing out test tubes at the far sink, the one next to the window. When I saw it, there was a rectangular mirror above the sink, probably put there for teachers to check their ties or something. I glanced up for a second, habit, I guess, and there I was, reflection clear, me and the counter, the wall behind me, the cabinet, but not Mr. Sinclair. He was walking right behind me. I heard his shoes, that soft, deliberate step of hard soles on tile. I felt his presence. You know that sensation, right? When someone is behind you, too close, your neck tightens, like your body just knows. He was there, but in the mirror, there was just ... Nothing, not a blur, not a shadow, not a smudge, just empty space where a full-grown man should be. I turned around instantly. He was there, standing maybe 4 feet away, arms crossed, watching me with those dark, unreadable eyes. Problem. Mr. Caldwell. His voice was calm, too calm, like warm honey poured over ice. I stammered something stupid. No. Sir, just done with these, or whatever, and practically shoved the beakers into the drying rack before grabbing my backpack. Be thorough, he said, as I reached for the door. Biology is all about attention to detail. I nodded without looking back and left. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I tried. I really did. I told myself reflections can be weird. That maybe the mirror was old or dirty or the lighting was weird. But I couldn't shake it. So the next day I tested it. I waited until class was over, hung back, and pretended to drop my pen. When Mr. Sinclair turned his back, I aimed my phone at the mirror and snapped a quick photo. In the photo, me, the mirror, the beakers. No, Mr. Sinclair. My stomach dropped. I deleted the photo. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. Like the phone itself didn't want to hold that image. Like I wasn't supposed to have it. After that, I started noticing things. Like how he never blinked. Seriously. Not once. Not even when chalk dust flew into his face. Not when someone sneezed loudly in front of him. His eyes were always open, wide and too still, almost painted on, and he never drank water. There was a bottle on his desk. Same bottle, same level. I watched it for 3 days, never moved. Then there was the humming dot. At first I thought it was the lights, that low electric drone you get used to. But the more I listened, the more I realized it wasn't the lights, it was him. A low, tuneless hum that came from his direction. Barely audible, almost like a vibration. I asked my friend Zach about it. I kept it casual. Hey, you ever notice anything ... weird about Sinclair? Zach raised an eyebrow. Besides the fact that he dresses like it's still the 1950s. No, like ... in the lab. You ever look at him in the mirror? What kind of question is that? Just ... humor me, he shrugged. I don't know, dude. He creeps me out a little, but whatever, he's just ... old, probably hates kids. Or he's vegan. That didn't help. A few days later, something happened that made it worse. It was Friday. We were doing a dissection lab. Mr. Sinclair moved from table to table, watching us work, correcting hand positions, commenting on technique. When he passed our table, he paused. Mr. Caldwell, have you ever thought about how delicate the boundary is between observation and interference? I looked up. Sir, you observe something, and by the very act of watching, you change it. Quantum biology. Fascinating, isn't it? He smiled. No teeth, just that stretched, polite curve of lips. Try not to blink too often, he added, and moved. On that night, I dreamed I was in the lab again, alone, but the mirror was bigger. Wall-sized, I looked into it and saw my own reflection smiling, only ... I wasn't, then. From behind my reflection, Mr. Sinclair appeared. He put a hand on the reflection's shoulder, leaned in close, and whispered something. I couldn't hear it, but my reflection nodded, and then turned to walk away. Out of the mirror, I woke up drenched in sweat. I don't know what's going on. Just know this. My biology teacher doesn't have a reflection, and I think he knows I know. Part 2. The Eyes That Don't Blink. It started with the ceiling projector. We were watching some grainy old nature documentary on cell biology, the kind with a monotone narrator and animated cell membranes floating like jellyfish. I wasn't even paying attention, not really. My eyes were drifting, half-lidded, when I noticed something unsettling. Mr. Sinclair wasn't blinking. He sat in the back corner of the room, arms crossed, face stone still, his eyes locked on the screen like he was hypnotized. Not even a twitch. At first I thought maybe he'd fallen asleep with his eyes open, which would have been weird enough. But after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, those pale, watery eyes still didn't waver. He didn't blink once. I tried to count the seconds between blinks. There weren't any. It was just one long, unbroken stare. And when the lights flickered back on, he moved like nothing had happened, standing up with that same stiff grace and clearing his throat as if nothing in the world was strange. But something was strange. I could feel it deep in my gut. That primal, unspoken feeling you get when you know someone is watching you in the dark, when you know something is off. I told Tasha after class. We weren't close friends, more like lab partners by alphabetical accident. But she always had this weird way of noticing things. She didn't laugh when I told her. Instead, she said, "Yeah, I know." Her voice was low, almost a whisper, like she was afraid someone might overhear. We were in the hallway near the vending machines, the ones that never worked right. "You ever stay after class to finish a project?" she asked, leaning closer. I nodded. Once, during the dissection unit, I had to label all the parts of a fetal pig. It took forever. Tasha looked down the hall, then back at me. Her lips barely moved. I stayed late one night. 2 weeks ago, everyone else had gone home, even the janitor. I forgot my phone in the biolab, so I snuck back in. She paused. "He was in there." I frowned. "Mr. Sinclair?" She nodded slowly. He was standing in the middle of the room. No lights on, just standing there, like ... perfectly still. Not doing anything, not even breathing, it looked like. I watched him for at least 5 minutes. He didn't move a muscle. Then he turned. She shivered. He turned toward me like he heard me thinking. Not footsteps, not the door creak, just ... new. I waited for her to say she was joking. She didn't. "What did you do?" I asked. "I ran," she said. Didn't look back. "I haven't stayed late since." Her words stuck to me like cold sweat. I wanted to dismiss it, to laugh and say she was making it up. But I couldn't, because I'd seen it too. That week, I started watching him, not in a creepy way, just ... observant. When he walked the halls, I tracked his steps. When he taught, I sat in front and kept count. Still no blinking. One day, I deliberately dropped a pen behind him when he was writing on the board. He didn't flinch. But when I stood up to retrieve it, his voice came without turning. "Eyes on your notes, Leo." I froze. He hadn't turned. He hadn't looked. But somehow, he knew exactly what I was doing. Every time I passed him in the hallway after that, his head would tilt just slightly, as if adjusting to the weight of my stare. His smile never reached his eyes. Maybe because they never moved. Started having trouble sleeping. I kept thinking about the way he stood in that classroom, perfectly still, like a taxidermy version of himself. I dreamed of eyes floating in jars, of mirrors showing empty rooms, of desks where students sat, silent and unmoving. Tasha started avoiding me. I didn't blame her. I think she could feel it. To that, whatever Mr. Sinclair was, it was watching us now, closer. One afternoon, I stayed behind to talk to Mrs. Callahan, the guidance counselor. I tried to hint that I was feeling weird about school, that maybe a teacher was creeping me out. She smiled, warm and practiced, and asked who. "Mr. Sinclair," I said. Her face didn't change, not at first. Then she blinked, once, slowly, and said, "We don't have a teacher named Mr. Sinclair." I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking. Biology teacher. Tall, grey hair, sharp cheekbones, always wears a blue tie. She stared at me. Leo, our biology teacher, is Ms. Pennington. Mr. Sinclair retired. 10 years ago. My skin went ice cold. That's not possible, I whispered. She pulled out her staff list, scrolled through it. No Sinclair. I ran to the library and dug up an old yearbook. The science department page showed him all right. Mr. Sinclair. Same face, same eyes. Date. 2009. That night, I sat on my bed, staring into the dark. In the corner of my room, just for a second, I could swear I saw the reflection of eyes that weren't mine, watching from inside the window. They didn't blink. Part 3. Ancient Biology. They say the school library hasn't been fully catalogued since the early 80s. That's probably why there's a whole section behind the boiler room, where the lights flicker, the air smells like forgotten paper, and nobody really goes except maybe the janitor. And even he doesn't stay long. I only went back there because Mr. Sinclair sent me to find some old anatomy charts. He claimed there were backup supplies stored near the old archives. I wasn't sure why he didn't just email the front office or ask the librarian. But when Mr. Sinclair tells you something, you don't argue. You nod and you go. The hallway past the boiler room was narrow, filled with busted carts and books warped by moisture. I had to duck under a pipe dripping cold water and squeeze between two rusting file cabinets just to reach the final shelf. That's when I saw it. A thick, leather-bound biology textbook. Not the glossy kind with colorful diagrams. This one was aged, its cover cracked like old skin, the pages yellowed and curling at the edges. The gold letters barely visible anymore. Introduction to Natural Life Processes. I opened it, flipping past handwritten notes in pencil, strange diagrams of organs labeled in Latin. Some sketched in ink so old it had turned brown. Then I saw the back. Pajand, my stomach clenched. Property of J.S. Sinclair, 1897 at first. I told myself it had to be a coincidence. Sinclair's not an uncommon name. Maybe it was someone's great-grandfather. But my eyes kept returning to the signature. The way this looped down and across, the sharp, confident curve of the J. It was identical to how Mr. Sinclair signs the lab board every Monday. Mr. J.S. Sinclair. It didn't make sense. No one could be that old. It had to be some kind of weird joke. Maybe a former teacher with the same name. I wanted to believe that. Really, I did. But something had changed since I touched that book, that night. I dreamed of a classroom with wooden desks, gas lamps, and students dressed like they were waiting for horse-drawn buggies. And Mr. Sinclair stood at the front, exactly as he looks now, immaculate tie, pale hands, eyes too dark. He was speaking Latin. I woke up sweating, heart pounding. I almost laughed it off. Just stress, right? But when I arrived at school the next day, Mr. Sinclair turned from the board and said, "Welcome back, Leo. I trust your dreams were educational." I hadn't told anyone. Later that afternoon, I met up with Tasha near the gym bleachers. She'd always been the one person who believed me without asking for proof. I showed her the book. "No way," she whispered, flipping through it. This is pre-genetics. Look, this diagram doesn't even show chromosomes." "Check the name," I said. She did, and her face went pale. "You don't think I don't know what I think," I cut in. "But this is real." And he knew I found it. He said something about my dreams. Tasha bit her lip. "Maybe he's messing with you. Maybe he planted the book." I wanted to believe that, desperately, but the dust on the cover had been undisturbed. The page edges were brittle. The ink was faded. It had been there for decades. "Do you remember the first day of class?" Tasha said slowly, when he said he's been teaching for a long time. "We thought it was a joke." He said, "I've been teaching biology longer than you've been alive, longer than your parents, longer than your history books would dare to admit." We'd all laughed, but now it didn't feel like a joke. That week, I started noticing other things. Old yearbooks didn't list Mr. Sinclair, not under teachers, not under faculty. But there were photos, old black and white class pictures, where a man with his exact face stood in the background, always at the edge, always near the lab coat racks, always the same face. I printed a few of them out, highlighted the figure. Tasha stared at them in silence. "He hasn't aged a day," she murmured. That's not ... That's not possible. Unless he never needed to." We didn't talk about it for a few days after that, but the feeling stayed. The weird weight of being watched. The way Mr. Sinclair seemed to always appear in doorways right when we mentioned his name. One time, I looked out the window and saw his reflection in the glass, not beside me, but behind me only. When I turned around, nothing. Tasha thinks we need to find more. That maybe there's a reason the book was hidden. That maybe other things are too. But I don't know. I think it was meant to be found. Or, worse, I think it was waiting for someone to find it. And I did. Now, every time I pass the biolab, Mr. Sinclair's eyes follow me, not just with curiosity, but like he's remembering me from somewhere else, sometime long before I was born. And that's what terrifies me the most. What if I've met him before? What if we all have? Part 4, Midnight Dissection. It started with a question that should have been funny. Why is there fog coming out of the science lab at midnight? Leo had asked it in a whisper, crouched behind the trash bins near the east wing doors. His breath puffed out in clouds, despite it being a warm spring night. Tasha beside him didn't laugh. She was watching the lab windows. One had a faint orange glow behind it, like the light inside was flickering, trying to decide whether to stay on or blink out forever. "Are you ready?" she asked. Leo nodded, though every part of his body screamed no. They weren't supposed to be here. Breaking into school after hours wasn't just risky, it was stupid. But then again, finding an ancient textbook signed J.S. Sinclair, 1897, had pushed them past the point of logic. They had to know. The side door gave in after a few seconds of fiddling with a copied key. Tasha's cousin worked janitorial shifts and they were inside. The school smelled different at night. Less like sweat and dry erase markers, more like old copper and silence. Their sneakers made soft, scuffing sounds as they moved down the hallway, crouching low beneath trophy cases and rows of faded class photos. And then they reached the biology lab. The door was closed, but unlatched. Leo slowly turned a knob. The smell hit them first. Not rot, not exactly. It was metallic, sharp, like ozone during a thunderstorm, mixed with something faintly sweet and terribly wrong. Inside, the lights were off except one. A hanging desk lamp, the kind you clamp to the side of a workbench, was angled down over a metal table. Mr. Sinclair stood over it. He wasn't wearing his usual brown blazer. He wore a long black apron that looked like it was made from rubber or something older. His sleeves were rolled up. His hands, long pale, moved with a slow, meticulous rhythm, slicing something on the table. But it wasn't a frog. Leo squinted. The thing on the table had skin like ash and too many joints. Its chest had ridges that pulsed like it was still breathing, or trying to remember how. Sinclair didn't speak. He moved like someone playing a memorized piano, piece measured. Silent, sure. Beside him sat a glass jar. Inside it, something dark boiled. Not like boiling water, more like it writhed, as if alive. It pulsed faintly, casting weird reflections against the ceiling. Leo's fingers gripped Tasha's sleeve. She didn't move, she didn't breathe. Then Sinclair spoke, not to them, not aloud. He whispered something in a language neither of them knew. It had clicks and long winding vowels. As he did, the jar grew brighter. The creature on the table twitched. Leo's knees felt soft. He took a step back too fast. His shoes scraped the floor. Sinclair froze, not like a person startled, more like a machine on pause. His head turned naturally slow, but he didn't look at them. He looked at the window, the one behind them. Leo realized in horror what it meant. "He knows we're here," Tasha whispered. It was the barest breath of sound. Sinclair walked slowly to the jar. He placed both hands around it. The liquid inside stopped moving. Then he turned to the blackboard and began writing. His hand moved fast lines, symbols, not letters. Some looked like branching trees, others like open eyes. "Go," Tasha mouthed. They backed up, inch by inch. And that's when the power in the school cut out. The hallway behind them plunged into darkness. Only the faint glow from the jar remained, casting long, crooked shadows out the lab door. Then the jar shattered. Not loudly, more like a soft, wet pop. A hiss, low and growing, filled the air. And Sinclair spoke again. This time, a single word. Leo didn't know what it meant, but it echoed inside his skull like it had been meant for him. They ran down the dark hallway, past lockers that seemed to lean closer, past the trophy case where something now flickered, past the bathroom door that had cracked open on its own. Outside, the night air felt wrong, heavy. The moon was still out, but it had a ring around it. They didn't speak until they were 3 blocks from the school. Then Tasha said, "That thing on the table," it blinked at me. Leo didn't answer, because he had seen it too, and because he wasn't sure Mr. Sinclair was ever meant to teach human biology. Part 5. The Missing Student Sit started with a name that wasn't supposed to be there. Tasha was sitting cross-legged in the school library's archive room, dust pooling in the slivers of sunlight that cut through the blinds. She flipped through a dusty attendance ledger from 2019, just looking for patterns, maybe a coincidence. But that's when she found it. The name Natalie Finch. Natalie Finch had taken advanced biology with Mr. Sinclair. That wasn't strange. But what made Tasha's stomach turn was the little red line slashed across the column labeled final grade. No letter, no number, just a slash like someone cut her out of the system. And Natalie wasn't the only one. Over the next 2 hours, Tasha found 3 more names: Evan Rodriguez, Mia Tran, and Jordan Wells. All students who had registered for advanced biology, all missing. No graduation records, no transfer slips. Their names appeared, and then, like a skipped heartbeat, vanished. She didn't even notice Leo slip in until he whispered, "You look like you found a ghost." "Maybe I did," she muttered, pointing to the book. 4 of them, all gone, and Sinclair taught them all. Leo leaned in, his brows knotting. He didn't say anything, but Tasha knew his silence well enough by now. He was afraid she was right. They needed more than just names. Tasha remembered the yearbooks. Every year, the AV Club made digital copies and archived the print editions. Maybe the faces would tell them more than the paper trail. The 2019 yearbook was a faded red hardcover with a coffee stain on the back. She flipped to the junior class photos, her fingers slightly trembling. The portraits were lined up neatly, everyone smiling awkwardly against the same blue-gray backdrop. Evan, Mia, Jordan, Dad, Natalie Finch, except ... Natalie wasn't really there. Her photo looked like a low-resolution scan, the kind you might see on a corrupted file. Her features were faded, her face grainy like an old TV screen, and her eyes, oh God. They were wide open, but there was no focus, just blank, eerie grayness, as if the soul had been deleted. Why would they print this? Leo asked, recoiling slightly. Maybe they didn't notice. Maybe no one ever really looks, Tasha replied, her voice thin. They checked the rest of the yearbook. Natalie appeared again in a club photo, the Science League. Same faded face, same vacant stare. And this time, her hand was resting on someone's shoulder, someone who wasn't there. There was just empty space where another student should be. This isn't just weird anymore, Leo said. This is ... wrong. They took photos of the pages and snuck the yearbook out, hidden between Leo's hoodie and his jacket. The halls were starting to echo with the early sounds of after-school activities, so they ducked out the back door of the library. That night, Tasha couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The image of Natalie Finch's eyes burned behind her own eyelids. She kept her phone close, scrolling through the yearbook scans under the covers, zooming in on Natalie's face. Just before 2 a.m., her phone flickered. The image glitched. A flash of static ran across the screen. Tasha gasped and pulled the phone back. When the picture stabilized, something had changed. In the Science League photo, Natalie was now looking directly at the camera. No smile, no expression, just looking. Her breath caught, her heart thudded. She blinked. It hadn't been like that before. The next morning, she rushed to show Leo. "This is insane," he whispered, staring at the photo. "Did it update itself?" "It changed, Leo. The original is on the school server. I didn't edit anything." They sat in the far corner of the cafeteria, watching Sinclair from across the room. He was eating alone, like always. Fork moving mechanically, never blinking. The other teachers barely acknowledged him. It was like he existed just outside the edge of their reality. What if those kids didn't run away? Tasha said slowly, "What if ... what if they stayed? Just not here?" Leo stared at her. "You mean like taken or erased?" Leo opened his mouth to respond, but then he stopped. Mr. Sinclair had turned his head ever so slightly and was staring directly at them. He hadn't moved before, hadn't seemed to notice, but now his eyes were locked. Not angry, not curious, just ... watching. They looked away quickly, pretended to laugh about something, but the food in their mouths tasted like sand. That afternoon, Leo asked their school IT guy, Mr. Harlan, if he could look at some old yearbook files, said he needed photos for a class project. Mr. Harlan gave him a USB loaded with backups. That night, Leo and Tasha scrolled through the yearbook files on his laptop. When they pulled up the folder marked 2019, the files glitched. The same static, the same flicker, and then they found it. A folder inside the yearbook folder, named only Echoes. Inside were portraits, dozens of them. Students, neither of them recognized, all in grayscale, all with eyes just like Natalie Finch's, empty, flat, not quite human. At the bottom of each file, Observer, J.S. Sinclair. Tasha leaned back, whispering, "This isn't a yearbook. It's a collection." Leo felt cold in his chest. Not the kind of fear that made you scream, the kind that made you quiet. "And we might be next," he said. They deleted nothing. They closed the laptop. They sat in silence, and outside the window, under the sodium glow of the school parking lot, Mr. Sinclair stood motionless by the science wing. He wasn't facing them, but they both had the same terrible feeling. ... He knew exactly where they were, and he wasn't blinking. Part 6 DNA, not from this world. Hair doesn't usually hum, does it? That was the first thing Leo whispered to himself as he held the single, silvery strand up to the desk lamp in his bedroom. It didn't exactly hum out loud, but in his hand, it gave off the faintest vibration, not like electricity, not static, just ... presence, like it wanted to be noticed. Leo had taken the hair from Mr. Sinclair's coat collar that morning when the teacher leaned over his desk. It had clung to the wool like a thread of frost. No one saw Leo slip it into the zippered pocket of his hoodie. He'd planned everything. His cousin worked in the science department at a local college and owed Leo a favor. That's how he got access to the DNA scanner after hours. The machine wasn't exactly top-tier FBI level, but it could distinguish between human, animal, and known species genomes. More than enough to prove a point. Leo didn't tell Tasha, not yet. Ever since they saw Mr. Sinclair dissecting that thing under flickering lights, she hadn't slept well. And truth be told, Leo had started noticing little gaps in his own memory. Like why his locker code suddenly changed, or why he dreamed in black and white now. Weird, dusty dreams. That night, with the lab lights dimmed and a storm murmuring beyond the college windows, Leo fed the hair sample into the small DNA analyzer. It blinked green. The machine hummed. While waiting, Leo leaned back, scrolling through his phone, half expecting the machine to spit out something ordinary. Maybe Sinclair had a rare condition. Maybe it was just animal hair. Maybe all of this was just stress, teenage paranoia. He closed his eyes. Beep. He jerked upright. The machine had stopped. The screen flashed. Match not found. Neutralization to known species. Leo frowned. He clicked retry. Same result. He clicked analyze mutation chains. Another pause. Then, anomalous structure detected. Unknown organic compound. What? He printed the report. The pages rolled out, warm and trembling in his fingers. Quadrilateral protein folds. Carbon framework. No mammalian base pairs. It was like looking at gibberish that made a terrible kind of sense. The DNA wasn't just unknown. It was incompatible, like it came from something parallel, something adjacent to biology. Then all the lights went out. Click, darkness, the lab. Moments ago, humming with fluorescent glow, turned coffin black. Leo froze. The printer had stopped mid-page. The machine screen was dead. Only the sound of the rain tapping the glass. Then another sound. A footstep, but not behind him. Overhead, on the lab ceiling, he held his breath. Another step, then a soft scrape, like nails or claws, dragging the emergency light above the exit. Blinked on for a second, just long enough for Leo to see a shadow shift near the back of the room, too tall. wrong joints, bending where it shouldn't. He grabbed the report, crumpling it in his palm, and backed toward the exit. The overhead footsteps stopped. Silence. He turned the handle, locked, double quotes, C single quotes, man ... Another blink from the emergency light. This time he saw a silhouette. On the wall, not on the floor. On the wall, pressed to it like a lizard, limbs outstretched, facing him. A low whisper slithered out from the dark. Not a voice, more like wind through bone. He banged the door. Help, anybody. Open up, nothing. Then as suddenly as the darkness had come, the lights returned. The lab was empty. Leo blinked, heartbeat ragged. Everything was back in place. The DNA scanner buzzed idly. The printout finished. But the silhouette ... the whisper, had felt too real. He looked down at the final page. At the bottom, under the gibberish genetic code, a single line had appeared in bold. You shouldn't have looked. Leo stared at it. It wasn't part of the software. He knew that much. The font wasn't standard. It looked ... carved, almost hand-drawn, as if someone had etched it onto the screen and forced the printer to replicate it. He didn't bring the page home. He left it there, but that night, in his room, with the window slightly cracked and the wind slipping in like a whisper, he found another copy of it. On his desk, same page, same words, same strange mark beneath the text, an almost circular sigil, shaped like a coiled helix and an open eye. He tore it up, burned it, and in the firelight, just for a moment, he saw the shape of Mr. Sinclair standing outside his window, smiling, not moving, not blinking, just ... watching. Part 7, the class you can't leave, you know. Something's wrong when the second hand on the classroom clock stops moving, but the silence gets louder. It happened during a Tuesday, just a normal, groggy Tuesday in Mr. Sinclair's advanced biology class. Leo sat in his usual seat, back row, third from the left. Tasha was one desk over, doodling in the margin of her notebook. The overhead lights buzzed with that sickly yellow hum, and the scent of formaldehyde still clung to the room like a ghost that refused to leave. Mr. Sinclair stood at the front, motionless. One hand rested on the lectern. He was staring at the board where he had written the words metamorphosis and beyond. Leo blinked. Something felt ... off. It wasn't just Mr. Sinclair's stillness. It wasn't even the silence of the class. His classmates weren't whispering, tapping, even breathing, it seemed. It was the clock, 10:47. The red second hand had stopped. Mid-tick. Leo glanced around, expecting someone to laugh. A prank, maybe. But no one moved. They just sat, eyes forward, faces slack, like mannequins waiting for a cue. He nudged Tasha. She didn't react. Tasha, he whispered, louder. Nothing. He reached over and shook her shoulder gently. Her eyes didn't even blink, just stared ahead, unseeing. Panic tried to bubble up, but Leo swallowed it down. He stood. His chair made no sound against the floor. He crossed the room to the door, hand on the metal handle. It didn't move, locked. He tried again, harder, nothing. The door wouldn't budge. He turned to the class, to Mr. Sinclair, still frozen. Leo walked to the nearest window. He pulled open. The blind and his stomach dropped. There was nothing outside. No courtyard. No sky, no trees. Just blackness, thick and endless, pressing against the glass like a living shadow. It wasn't nighttime. It wasn't even fog. It was void. He backed away. His phone. He fumbled it out of his pocket, hands shaking, unlocked. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no battery percentage, just the lock screen, frozen at 10:47 a.m. He tried calling 911. The screen blinked, flickered, and the call didn't go through. The phone went black, then static. It buzzed once, then died. Leo looked up. Mr. Sinclair had moved, just his head. It was now turned ever so slightly enough that Leo could see the corner of his mouth, smiling. Leo stumbled back, almost tripping over a desk. "What is this?" he whispered aloud, voice cracking. From behind, he heard the scrape of a chair leg. He spun around. Tasha was standing, her face blank, eyes wide, but then she blinked. She blinked. "Leo," she whispered, voice hoarse. "Are you seeing this?" Too. Relief washed through him like cold rain. He grabbed her wrist. "Yes, you're awake. I don't know what happened." She turned to the windows, then the door. "This isn't possible." They both looked at Mr. Sinclair. He hadn't moved again, still smiling. Tasha stepped toward the board, where the words metamorphosis and beyond were written. "What does that even mean?" she muttered. Then, softer, "Beyond what?" Leo stared at the clock, 10:47, still. "I think," he said, hesitantly, ... "we're not in the school anymore." Tasha looked at him. "Then where are we?" Leo didn't answer, because just then, the lights flickered. Once, twice, and Mr. Sinclair moved again, his eyes, blank and glassy, locked onto Leo. He blinked once, a slow, deliberate blink, then said something so quiet, so low, it was more vibration than sound. "Stay seated." The classroom door let out a loud click. It unlocked, but the window glass began to darkening, spreading across it like a spider's web, sealing them in. Leo grabbed Tasha's hand. "We need to go, now." They rushed to the door, flung it open, stepped out into the hallway. Only, it wasn't the hallway. It was another classroom. Identical, same desks, same board, same clock, 10:47. Mr. Sinclair stood at the front, waiting. Tasha looked behind them. No door, just wall. They were in the class again, and again, and again, and again. Somewhere, miles away in the real world, the school bell rang, but no one noticed Leo and Tasha weren't in class, because the roll call said they were present. And in the photo taken that day, they were there, sitting quietly, not blinking. The only ones who knew they were missing were them. Part 8. What's in the freezer, Leo? Never liked the sound the freezer made. It was low and steady, like a breath being held. Not quite mechanical, not quite natural, just ... wrong. And the door, always locked, always off limits. The sign on it read, "Maintenance Storage. Authorized personnel only," but students whispered a different name. The cold room. It was 7:43 p.m. on a Friday, and Leo had waited until the janitor finished his last round. He'd timed it perfectly, just like when he and Tasha used to sneak into the library archives. But this time, she wasn't with him. Not after what happened in Mr. Sinclair's class. Not after the void. Since then, she barely spoke. Just sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her brother's old watch. That watch had stopped ticking the day he disappeared. Leo found the key on Sinclair's desk 3 days ago. Not on purpose. It was hooked to a lanyard behind a stack of lesson plans, untouched, unwatched. The moment his fingers brushed against it, He felt that familiar chill climb his spine, like the air got thinner. He knew what he had to do. The hallway was unnaturally quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you listen harder. Leo pressed his ear against the freezer door. The breath-like hum was louder here, and beneath it, ... tapping, soft, irregular, like fingertips, brushing glass from the inside. He slid the key into the lock. It turned with a smooth, oiled click. The air that spilled out when the door cracked open wasn't just cold, it was ancient, like it hadn't moved in years. Inside, fluorescent tubes flickered overhead, bathing the narrow room in sterile humming light. It was lined with metal shelves, all empty except for the back wall. There, under layers of frost and misted glass, panels were shapes. He walked slowly, each step echoing like it didn't belong to this world. There were 5 of them, human-sized, some curled, some straight, covered in frost so thick it blurred their features but not their presence. Leo could see arms, legs, faces, except they weren't just people, they were outlines, like shadows pressed into solid form, transparent but real, frozen echoes of something that used to breathe. His breath caught when he saw the 3rd one. Its wrist was lifted, oddly angled against the chest. On it, frozen into place, was a battered silver watch. The face was cracked, the leather strap torn, and even through the frost, Leo recognized the tiny etching on the side. To Ezra, from Tasha's brother. Leo stumbled backward, heart punching against his ribs. His throat tightened. Ezra had vanished 2 years ago. They said he ran away. Left town. The police never found a trace. But Tasha never believed it. And now Leo was looking at him. More whatever was left. He reached out a shaking hand, fingertips just inches from the icy panel. The frost suddenly bloomed outward, like breath against a mirror. A faint thud sounded. From within, Leo jerked his hand back. Another thud, then nothing. The freezer lights buzzed louder. Something felt ... awake. He backed away. But his foot caught a crack in the linoleum and he fell hard, elbow slamming against cold tile. As he scrambled up, the door at the front of the freezer creaked closed. Slowly, deliberately. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He lunged for it, catching the handle just before it clicked shut. He yanked it open and stumbled into the hallway. Heart sprinting, throat burning. Behind him, the door swung half-closed on its own. He didn't touch it. Didn't need to. He ran. He didn't stop until he was outside the school, bent over on the grass, panting in the orange glow of the streetlights. When he got home, he told Tasha. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stood up, took the watch from her desk, and handed it to Leo. "He was wearing this when he left," she said. "It wasn't broken." Leo opened his palm. The frost had melted, but the imprint of the etching to Ezra from was there. Clear, cold. "I need to go back," he said. Tasha looked at him. Her eyes had the same distant glaze as Sinclair's did sometimes, just before he smiled. "Next time," she whispered. "Bring salt." Leo didn't ask why. Somehow, he already knew in the basement freezer room of West Hill High. 5 frozen forms stood silent, but now there were 6, and one of them had started to thaw. Part 9, the final test. There was no study guide. Just a single sentence on the board. Only the adaptable survive. It was Monday morning, which was already suspicious. Mr. Sinclair never gave tests on Mondays. He claimed it was a day to recalibrate. the brain. And he usually spent the class time showing us slides of animals doing weird stuff, like frogs freezing themselves solid and coming back to life, or lizards growing extra limbs under UV light. But today was different. The classroom felt colder than usual. The blinds were down, casting long, grey shadows. No one spoke. Even Dylan, who always made a big show of pretending to sleep, sat upright in his chair like he was bracing for a wave. Mr. Sinclair walked in precisely as the second bell rang. He didn't smile, he didn't speak. He just picked up a piece of chalk and wrote that one sentence on the board. Only the adaptable survive. Then he turned around and said, "Today is your final." We all looked at each other, confused. Tasha raised her hand. "Final. It's October." Mr. Sinclair smiled thinly. "Time is arbitrary. Evolution doesn't follow a schedule." The door behind him clicked, locked. Phones had no signal again. Of course, that was when the lights flickered. But instead of coming back fully, they dimmed until everything looked sepia-toned, like an old photograph. The air smelled like metal, and something slightly rotten, like forgotten lunch meat. "You're not here to memorize diagrams," he said. "You're here to become more than what you were." Leo nudged me, whispering, "This is another one of his twisted metaphors, right?" But I wasn't so sure. Mr. Sinclair pulled a remote from his pocket and clicked it. A panel slid open in the wall we never noticed before. Behind it was a long corridor, lit by a pulsing blue light. "You'll go in pairs," he said. "Solve the problems. Make it through." I raised my hand. "What kind of problems?" "Biological, psychological. Moral, evolutionary pressure reveals the true self. You'll either adapt ... or fail." He called the first pair. Tasha and Dylan. They walked through the opening, and the walls sealed behind them with a hiss. We waited. 5 minutes. 10, no sound. Then, the panel opened again. Dylan walked out alone, pale, sweating. He wouldn't look any of us in the eye, just sat down quietly. When someone asked where Tasha was, he whispered she didn't adapt. My turn came, me and Leo. The hallway was narrower than it looked. The walls pulsed faintly, like veins under skin. There was a low hum, almost like whispering in a language I didn't understand. We reached the first chamber, a glass tank. Inside, a mouse sat frozen with fear in the corner. A robotic arm dangled above it, ready to drop a small weight. A scream. Read, kill the mouse to open the door. Refuse, and time loops. Leo stared at me. He can't be serious. I looked around for cameras. There were none. Or maybe they were hidden. "Let's wait it out," I said. But the room reset. We were back at the entrance. Again, the mouse, the arm, the choice. Third time, the message changed. Adaptation requires sacrifice. Leo grabbed the arm before I could stop him. He twisted it toward the tank's power cord, snapping it with a surge. Sparks flew. The door opened. The next room was darker. A screen showed video clips of our classmates saying things they never said. Me calling Tasha pathetic. Leo telling Dylan he wanted him to disappear. Words we never spoke, but they looked real. Sounded real. "How do you prove the truth when no one believes you?" the screen asked. We answered by silence. The door opened, more rooms, more questions. Some felt philosophical, others felt like tricks. One room was just mirrors, but our reflections didn't copy us. Mine smiled before I did. Leo's reflection blinked one extra time. The final door led back to the classroom, except now half the desks were empty. Mr. Sinclair stood at the board, hands behind his back. "What did you learn?" he asked. Leo spoke first. "That you're insane." Mr. Sinclair tilted his head. "Insanity is a lack of adaptation." He walked toward me. "And you," I hesitated. "That surviving doesn't always mean winning." He smiled. "Very good." Then he handed us envelopes. "Results?" Leo opened his face dropped, then slowly looked up at me. "What does yours say?" I asked. But mine was blank. Just one symbol inside. It wasn't human. The lights flickered again. Mr. Sinclair said, "Class dismissed." But no one moved, because now there were 3 of me, and only 1 seat left. Part 10. The last experiment. The hallway was empty, but Leo could still hear his name being whispered through the vents. It wasn't the kind of whisper that fades. It was sticky, like honey smeared across your brain. Slow, thick, and impossible to ignore. He had waited long enough. Mr. Sinclair had stopped pretending weeks ago. Ever since the final test began, the teacher had barely spoken in full sentences. His eyes moved too fast, scanning the room like they were recording. His voice came from his throat, but didn't feel anchored, like something was borrowing it. Leo crept through the science wing, careful not to step on the broken tile near room 3C. He knew every sound this building made by now, the way the old heater hissed, the buzz in the exit sign, the faint electric hum in the walls. But tonight, none of those sounds were there. No electricity, no motion sensors, no hum, just the silence of something waiting. He pushed open the door to Mr. Sinclair's classroom. It was colder inside, like walking into a meat locker. The lights flickered weakly, casting shadows that didn't behave. They jerked a little too quickly, like they were reacting before he moved. Mr. Sinclair stood at the front, hands folded behind his back, staring at the whiteboard. Nothing was written on it. "I know what you are," Leo said, his voice steadier than expected. Sinclair turned slowly. He smiled, but his face didn't. His eyes stayed wide, glassy, too bright. His smile moved like a mask being pulled upward, muscles obeying rules they shouldn't. "Do you?" Sinclair asked. Leo pulled a crumpled page from his hoodie, the DNA report. "This isn't from Earth, or from anywhere mapped. It's not even carbon-based." The smile didn't move. Sinclair stepped closer. "That's why you passed. Curiosity, the only trait that matters." Leo stepped back. "You froze them, the others, Tasha's brother. They're still here, just not really." Mr. Sinclair's form began to flicker, not fade shift, like static over a channel that never came in right. His suit rippled, his outline blurred. They didn't fail Leo. They transformed into what? Sinclair tilted his head. Into what comes next? Then the floor cracked, not the kind of crack you hear from settling beams. It split clean and sharp right beneath Leo. The tiles peeled back, revealing a black void beneath, pulsing with faint blue light. Leo tried to run, but the door had vanished, not closed. Vanished. Mr. Sinclair reached out, not with hands, but something like memory, a pull behind Leo's eyes, in his chest, in the roots of every thought. The void expanded, and Leo fell. He didn't hit ground. He landed in silence. A hallway stretched out in all directions. Fluorescent lights blinked above it, flicker casting a slightly different version of the space. like the hallway couldn't decide which version to be. The air smelled like burned paper and snow. Then he saw them, the missing students. They stood in small clusters, still unblinking. Their skin was smooth and pale, almost translucent. Their eyes shimmered like oil on water. Not dead, not alive. Different, they didn't speak. But Leo felt their thoughts like waves informed, but loud. Curiosity, hunger, and something else, recognition. Then, in the center of the space, a mirror. It wasn't attached to a wall. It stood by itself, tall and thin, with an ornate black frame that looked half-melted. Leo walked toward it. Every step echoed too long. He looked into the glass and didn't see his reflection. Not really. He saw himself, but slightly off. His eyes were darker, his skin paler. And slowly, as he stared, that version of him became clearer, while the real Leo began to fade. It started with his fingers, then his arms, like dust caught in reverse wind from behind the mirror. Something moved, something wearing Mr. Sinclair's face, but longer, stretching. Its bones creaked like old furniture. Leo tried to scream, but his voice had gone ahead of him. All that remained was a heartbeat, not his own, steady, inhuman, and counting down. 10, 9, 8. Then the story ends. Or maybe not, because if you check your school mirror tonight, and your reflection doesn't blink when you do, you're already part of the last experiment.
Hello everyone, I'm Ceoz Stories. Thank you for staying with me until the very last moment. If that story gave you chills, made you jump, or simply kept your eyes glued to the screen, don't hesitate to hit the like button to support the channel. Share this video with friends who enjoy these sensations too, and don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts, or even share strange things you've personally experienced, because I'd love to immerse myself in your stories as well. If you're eager to keep exploring untold mysteries, shadows that remain nameless, then subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. A new door will open every day. Are you ready for the next story?